So unfortunately for me, it's been a few times in my life for a few different periods where I have entered homelessness. So for maybe the first time would have been when I was 4 years old. My mother left my father because of a domestic violence dispute, and that kind of continued to trend later on in my life. But she left home with myself and my siblings. I'm the youngest of four siblings, which I can imagine was very, very difficult for her. But we entered a homeless shelter, and I have a few memories of this homeless shelter, thankfully positive. We learned how to play like checkers there, chess, things of that nature. But that was the first time that I was ever homeless.
And then what happens? You mentioned a few times, so
Right.
I'll dig into that if that's all right.
Yeah, so my mom did enter a relationship with my dad. She returned to him, and we lived with him probably until I was about 14 or 15 again. I can imagine on her part having four children. Both of my parents were born in Mexico, as was I. It was most likely pretty difficult to imagine supporting herself and four children in a country where you don't know anyone. So she went back to my father, and me and my father entered a physical dispute where my mother wasn't home and he was tumbling over items in my room to the point where I barricaded my room with a bookcase. So he ended up breaking the door down with the bookcase as well. And when my mother came back home, she said that we're leaving, that I should gather my things and that she was going to figure it out. So at that moment, we reached out to family and friends. Thankfully, we did have people that were able to help us throughout that situation, and we were able to bounce around between people whenever they were available to open their home to us.
How long did that last?
That was like, I think, I'm going to think about it. That situation lasted for about 2 years, maybe 3 years. We left the home with my father when I was around 15, and I remember reestablishing stable housing when I was around 18. So around 3 years we were bouncing around.
What was happening? What was the forward-looking Jacqueline in that moment?
The forward-facing Jacqueline in that moment was just your typical student. I believe the only people that knew were my siblings and maybe my best friend. So I went to a really small school. None of my teachers, none of my fellow peers knew, even though it was around 100 of us. So you can imagine it's very tight-knit. But I feel like I did as much as I could to not fit the bill of what maybe a homeless person looks like to the public. So I tried to be like as well groomed as possible, tried to be as well educated as possible in hopes that, that might help me leave that situation.
It's really interesting because I guess that comes back to kind of the overarching thing here, which is if you, especially as a kid, are trying to do everything you can, right? What are we all trying to do when we're teenagers? We're all trying to fit in.
Right.
You're trying your hardest to fit in, and you're successful at it. Sounds like no one's going to ask, and you're not going to want to tell them what's going on.
I would say that that's very accurate. Being homeless is something that can feel like a very shameful thing, and sometimes it doesn't just hurt your pride, but almost it feels like maybe your reputation or your credibility almost.
What would have happened if someone did ask, or did anyone ask?
That's a great question. I don't remember anyone asking or looking into the issue. We had one high school counselor, and she didn't seem to be very helpful to the students that had gone to her. So word had just kind of gotten to me that the students that had gone to help to the adults that were around me were not necessarily receiving the kind of help that they would have wanted or needed. I do think it could feel very vulnerable to have someone see through that facade. That facade is up for a reason, right? So it can feel very vulnerable, but at the same time, I think it would have been very helpful. I think had someone been able to allocate the resources that I needed at that time for either myself or my mother, it would have changed some outcomes for us that we were experiencing maybe negative circumstances surrounding around where we were staying that if we had accommodations we just would not be experiencing. Most of the times, my mother and I would share a room, and going from 15 to 18, having to share a room with your parent is just very difficult.
What was it like to get to college?
So I actually did dual enrollment. So from the time that I was 15 to 18, like the exact time frame actually that I was homeless. During the time frame that I was experiencing homelessness, I was also going through a program called ACE. So ACE will take students and then it'll match them with community colleges, and they can attend courses while they're in high school and get some college credit during high school.
So you were doing all that at the same time?
Correct.
Were you doing any other, I mean, again, back to the overachieving thing, were you doing any other extracurriculars, any other jobs or anything like that?
Yes, so I was in the robotics team at my school, and I did like odd jobs, just trying to get money or trying to get some kind of help for either my mom or myself. Students would often give me their homework, and I would just like complete their homework for like 15 or 20 bucks or whatever it was. I think I would like people that have not gone through homelessness themselves to just think about the stigma that is surrounding homelessness, and maybe think about people in their life who may have a facade up as well, or who may be needing help and they just don't know about it, to be able to reach out to your neighbors or the people in your school and be able to lend out a help.
3 or 4 years ago, we got evicted by our landlord without any time notice, and we only had maybe like a month to move, or else our rent was going to be doubled. And that's when I was like, okay, what are we gonna do? We're a big family, so we're a family of 6, and it was really hard to find a place for all of us to stay. You know, sometimes we'd stay with family members, with friends, and it was just really hard for a big family to find a single spot. So at times we would have to, you know, split up. My dad was working 3 jobs. I was also working 2 to 3 jobs, and my mom was, you know, tending to the younger siblings at home. At the time, I was in college, so I was also managing my studies, and it happened to be around finals week when this all happened. It was really stressful and overwhelming, and at that point, I was like, you know, I'm gonna maybe suck up my pride and ask for help. It's really hard for me or my family to ask for help, and we ended up asking, you know, people that we know, like relatives, and at times I had to ask my boyfriend, which was a bit embarrassing, but thankfully they were all very nice enough to help us out and lend us a hand, whether it be with groceries or with rides or maybe like a place to stay with an air mattress. That all helped us out. I think something that was unique for my story, I can remember one example really vividly, is when my mom was asking for help at a certain place, and just because she spoke Spanish, they kind of they just acted like she wasn't there. So like they kind of just kept walking around, walking about, and she was like, oh, do you guys speak Spanish? And they kind of just walked off instead of saying, oh, you know what, give me a second, I'm gonna go find somebody that speaks Spanish for you so we can help you guys get started. And so I was really upset with that, and I just was like, hey, like, you know, a simple give me 1 second would have been just fine, or like, does anybody else like, I could have stepped up and translated, but they just kind of ignored us, and we made us wait extra longer, or they made us wait longer than what we had to, just because in their eyes we didn't speak their language. And that, honestly, that got me really upset and frustrated. And my mom was like, I just wanted a simple answer, and they couldn't provide that. And we saw other people coming in and getting the help they needed, or the answer, or like the greetings, you know, the usual greetings, like, hello, welcome in, like, you know, and we just didn't get that type of, what's the word, like, get that type of energy or vibe from them.
It started when I was 14. My mother was an addict, and it got really bad when I was 14, and I had a brother that was 6 at the time. So essentially I was just taking care of him like he was my son. And it came to a couple years where I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't, because at the time I was in honors at high school, I was playing basketball, I was active in the clubs and all that, and I just wanted to just be able to be me and not having to feel like I need to, you know, take care of my brother, even though, yes, I love him, but it wasn't my responsibility. So I decided that to report it to the school, and my grandmother at the time helped me with that, and ended up where we were taken away and put in the foster care system. And I was living on the street, taking the light rail, living on the bus all the time, walking on the street, and then even living with, like, couch surfing with family, friends, people I didn't even know. So I was living in that lifestyle for 2 years. And then when I was about to turn 16, I guess, yeah, this is when I decided to move in with my grandparents. And then when I was 17, that was when I got accepted to ASU and then had pursued my degree in there. So I even lived on the board, or the room and board with ASU. And if I didn't go to ASU, I wouldn't know if I would have had a home when I aged out. So